The accident. At 50 years old, Sarah Mitchell woke up in a hospital bed not knowing where she was or what had happened. Her head pounded. The fluorescent lights above her felt impossibly bright. There were tubes in her arms, machines beeping, and a heaviness in her chest she couldn't explain. Then she tried to move her legs. The left one responded. The right one didn't. She tried again, commanding her body to move, to shift, to feel. Nothing. Just a strange, terrifying absence where her right leg should be. Sarah's hands moved down her body, trembling, searching. They found the edge of the hospital blanket. Beneath it, her left leg. And where her right leg should have been, there was only empty space ending abruptly at her knee. That's when she started screaming. This is the story of what happened next. How a 50-year-old woman who lost a leg in a devastating car accident transformed her trauma into a thriving business that now generates over $800,000 annually and helps thousands of amputees worldwide. But getting there required confronting physical pain, emotional devastation, and the complete reconstruction of everything she thought her life would be. It required failing, falling, and learning to walk again in ways she never imagined. 3 days earlier, Sarah Mitchell had been living what she considered a perfectly ordinary life in Portland, Oregon. She was a physical therapist, specializing in sports injuries and rehabilitation. For 22 years, she'd helped athletes recover from torn ACLs, runners overcome stress fractures, and weekend warriors get back to the activities they loved. She was good at her job. Her patients trusted her. She had a small practice she'd built from the ground up, a comfortable house in the suburbs, and 2 kids in college. Her marriage to David had ended in divorce 5 years ago, but she'd rebuilt her life. She was independent, financially stable, and reasonably content. On September 12, 2019, Sarah left her clinic at 6 p.m. after a full day of appointments. She was tired but satisfied. Her last patient, a high school soccer player, had just gotten cleared to return to play after a knee injury. Watching patients heal, seeing them regain mobility and confidence, was why she'd chosen this profession. She got in her Toyota RAV4, turned on NPR, and started the 25-minute drive home. It was raining, typical for Portland in September. The roads were slick but familiar. She'd driven this route 1,000 times. She never saw the truck. Later, the police report would say the semi-truck driver had fallen asleep at the wheel after driving for 14 hours straight. He'd crossed the median doing 65 miles per hour and hit Sarah's SUV head-on. The impact was catastrophic. Sarah's airbag deployed, which likely saved her life. But the front of her vehicle crumpled like paper. The engine block was pushed into the cabin. Her right leg, which had been positioned on the brake pedal at the moment of impact, was crushed between twisted metal and the displaced dashboard. She doesn't remember the collision, doesn't remember the sound, the pain, or the moment everything changed. Her brain, protecting her from trauma too intense to process, simply deleted those minutes. What she does remember is waking up briefly in the ambulance, hearing voices talking urgently about severe trauma to the right lower extremity and possible amputation. She remembers thinking, confused and detached, that they must be talking about someone else. Then darkness again. The surgery took 11 hours. The trauma team at Oregon Health and Science University worked desperately to save her leg. They repaired what they could. They cleaned out debris and dead tissue. They stabilized the shattered bones with pins and plates. But the damage was too severe. The blood vessels were destroyed. The tissue was dying. And by hour 8, the lead surgeon made the decision that would change Sarah's life forever. They had to amputate. Her right leg was removed 4 inches below the knee. When Sarah woke up 3 days later and discovered what had happened, her first emotion wasn't sadness. It was rage. Rage at the truck driver who'd fallen asleep. Rage at the universe for the randomness of it all. Rage at her own body for betraying her. She was a physical therapist. Her entire career was about bodies, movement, rehabilitation. And now her own body was broken in a way she'd never imagined. The hospital social worker came to talk to her that first day. A kind woman named Patricia with gentle eyes and a soft voice. "Sarah, I know this is overwhelming. But you're going to get through this. We have excellent resources for amputees. Physical therapy, prosthetics, support groups." "Get out," Sarah said, her voice cold and flat. "I don't want to hear it. Just get out." Patricia left quietly, closing the door behind her. Sarah lay in that hospital bed for 3 more days, staring at the ceiling, refusing to talk to anyone except when absolutely necessary. Her daughter Emily flew in from college in Boston. Her son Marcus drove up from Eugene. They sat by her bedside, trying to comfort her, and she barely acknowledged them. "Mom, please," Emily said, tears running down her face. "Please talk to us. We're here for you." "I'm tired," Sarah said, turning her face away. "I just want to sleep." But she wasn't sleeping. She was lying there in the dark, her mind running in circles, confronting a future she couldn't comprehend. How would she work? How would she live independently? How would she do the 1,000 small things she'd taken for granted every day of her life? How would she be herself? On the 5th day in the hospital, they made her get out of bed. A physical therapist named James came in with a wheelchair. "No," Sarah said immediately. "I'm not ready." "I understand," James said patiently. "But staying in bed isn't helping. We need to start working on your upper body strength, your balance, your—" "You don't understand anything," Sarah snapped. "You have no idea what this is like." "You're right," James said calmly. "I don't. But I know that the longer you wait to start moving, the harder it will be. And I know that you're a physical therapist, so you know I'm right." Something about his tone, matter of fact rather than pitying, got through to her. Sarah let him help her into the wheelchair. The process was humiliating. She felt weak, helpless, dependent in ways she'd never been. They wheeled her down to the physical therapy gym, a large room filled with equipment she recognized from her own clinic. Parallel bars, exercise mats, resistance bands. Seeing it from this perspective, as a patient rather than a therapist, was disorienting. "We're just going to work on transfers today," James said. "Getting in and out of the wheelchair. Building strength." It was the hardest thing Sarah had ever done. Her body felt foreign, unbalanced. The absence of her right leg threw off everything. She fell twice trying to transfer to a mat. Each time, frustration and humiliation washed over her in waves. "I can't do this," she said after the second fall, her voice breaking. "I can't." "Yes, you can," James said. "It's day 1, Sarah. Day 1 of learning a completely new way to move. Give yourself time." But Sarah didn't want time. She wanted her leg back. She wanted her old life back. She wanted to rewind to 3 days ago when she was whole and independent and herself. After an hour, exhausted and emotionally drained, she let them wheel her back to her room. Emily was there, waiting. "How did it go?" her daughter asked hopefully. "How do you think it went?" Sarah said bitterly, "I fell on my face trying to do something a toddler can do." "Mom, you just had major surgery. You need to be patient with yourself." "Don't," Sarah said, her voice sharp. "Don't tell me to be patient. Don't tell me it gets better. Don't give me platitudes. You have no idea." Emily's face crumpled. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back. "I know you're angry, Mom. You have every right to be. But pushing away everyone who loves you isn't going to make this easier." Then she left. Sarah sat in that hospital room, alone with her anger and her grief. And for the first time since waking up, she let herself really cry. Not the screaming of that first moment of realization, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs for everything she'd lost. She cried for her leg, for her independence, for the life she'd had and the future she'd planned. She cried until she had nothing left, and then she lay in the dark, empty and exhausted. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah did something she'd been avoiding. She pulled out her phone and searched life after amputation. What she found terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. Stories of people who'd lost limbs and rebuilt their lives. Athletes who ran marathons on prosthetic legs. Climbers who scaled mountains. Ordinary people who'd learned to walk, work, and live again. But she also found stories of depression, isolation, unemployment, and struggle. People who never fully adjusted. People whose lives were forever diminished by loss. Sarah didn't know which story would be hers. And that uncertainty, that not knowing, was almost worse than the loss itself. The darkness. Sarah was discharged from the hospital after 2 weeks. She went home to a house that suddenly felt like an obstacle course. The front steps she'd walked up 1,000 times without thinking now required careful planning. The bathroom upstairs was inaccessible. Her bedroom felt impossibly far away. Emily and Marcus had rearranged furniture, installed grab bars, and set up a temporary bedroom in the downstairs office. "We tried to make it as comfortable as possible," Marcus said, gesturing around nervously. Sarah looked at what used to be her office, now converted into a makeshift bedroom for an invalid. "Thanks," she said flatly, not meeting his eyes. The first month home was hell. Simple tasks became monumental challenges. Getting dressed took 45 minutes. Showering required a special bench and exhausted her completely. Making coffee meant hopping on one leg while holding onto counters, terrified of falling. Her friends came to visit, bringing casseroles and sympathy. Sarah hated every minute of it. She saw the pity in their eyes, heard the careful tone in their voices. They treated her like she was fragile, broken, something to be handled gently. One friend, Karen, who she'd known for 15 years, came by with groceries. "I just want to help," Karen said. "Tell me what you need." "I need my leg back," Sarah snapped. "Can you do that?" Karen's face fell. "Sarah, I know this is hard, but..." "No, you don't know," Sarah interrupted. "You have no idea. So please, just go." Karen left, and Sarah didn't hear from her again. One by one, her friends stopped visiting. She pushed them away with her anger, and they let her. Emily came home from college every weekend for the first month, trying to help, trying to connect. But Sarah was impossible to reach. She was cold, angry, refusing comfort. "Mom, please talk to someone," Emily begged one Sunday. "A therapist, a support group, anyone. This anger is eating you alive." "I'm fine," Sarah said, staring at the TV without watching it. "You're not fine. You haven't left this house in 3 weeks except for doctor's appointments. You're not answering calls. You're pushing everyone away. Maybe I want to be alone." "No," Emily said, her voice breaking. "You don't. You're scared and you're hurt and you're hiding. But hiding isn't going to make this better." Sarah turned to look at her daughter, really look at her. Emily's eyes were red from crying. She looked exhausted, worried, desperate. And Sarah felt a stab of guilt so sharp it took her breath away. "I don't know how to do this," Sarah whispered, her anger finally cracking. "I don't know how to be this person." Emily sat down next to her and took her hand. "Then maybe you need to figure out who this person is. Because she's still you, Mom. Just different." After Emily left that night, Sarah sat in the dark for a long time. She thought about her daughter's words. She thought about the person she'd become, bitter, isolated, trapped in her own anger. She thought about her patients over the years. The ones who'd given up, who'd let their injuries define them. And the ones who'd fought back, who'd worked through pain and frustration to heal. She'd always admired the fighters. When had she stopped being one? At her next doctor's appointment, Sarah met with Dr. Jennifer Park, her prosthetist. Dr. Park was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with short grey hair and direct eyes. "Your residual limb has healed well," Dr. Park said, examining Sarah's leg. You're ready to be fitted for a prosthetic. We can start the casting process today. What's the point? Sarah said dully. I've read the statistics. Most people over 50 who lose a leg never walk normally again. They use wheelchairs or crutches. The prosthetics are uncomfortable, painful. Why bother? Dr. Park looked at her steadily. Because those statistics are averages. They include people who give up. People who don't do the work. Is that who you want to be? I don't know who I want to be anymore. Then let me tell you who I see, Dr. Park said. I see a woman who spent 22 years helping other people heal. Who understands rehabilitation better than most of my patients. Who has the knowledge and the strength to do this, if she chooses to. The question isn't whether you can. It's whether you will. Something in Dr. Park's words broke through. Sarah agreed to the casting. The process of getting fitted for a prosthetic leg was long and frustrating. The first socket didn't fit right and caused painful pressure points. The second was better but still uncomfortable. Learning to walk with it was like learning to walk all over again. Her physical therapist, a young woman named Ashley, was patient but demanding. You're favoring your left side too much. You need to trust the prosthetic. Put weight on it. It hurts, Sarah said through gritted teeth. I know. But babying it won't make it better. You know this, Sarah. You've told 100 patients the same thing. Sarah wanted to snap back, but she couldn't. Because Ashley was right. She'd spent 2 decades telling patients that healing required pushing through discomfort, trusting the process, doing the work even when it was hard. Now she had to take her own advice. Progress was painfully slow. After 6 weeks, she could walk 50 feet with the prosthetic before needing to rest. After 8 weeks, she made it around the block. After 10 weeks, she walked to the mailbox and back without stopping. Each milestone felt both monumental and pathetically small. She was 50 years old, celebrating the ability to walk to her mailbox. One morning, 3 months after the accident, Sarah's former business partner, Linda, called. Sarah, I need to talk to you about the practice. Sarah's physical therapy clinic. She hadn't thought about it in months. Linda had been managing it alone since the accident. I can't keep doing this by myself, Linda said gently. I'm overwhelmed. The patients are asking about you. I need to know what you want to do. Are you coming back? Sarah looked down at her prosthetic leg. Could she go back? Could she stand on her feet all day, demonstrating exercises, manually assisting patients? I don't know, Sarah said honestly. I need an answer soon, Linda said. Because if you're not coming back, I need to make other arrangements. Maybe bring in another partner, or consider selling. After they hung up, Sarah sat with that question. Who was she if not a physical therapist? That career had defined her for over 2 decades. It was her identity, her purpose, her livelihood. Could she still be that person? Or did she need to become someone new? That night, Sarah did something she hadn't done since the accident. She opened her laptop and searched for information about amputees returning to work. What she found surprised her. There were resources, but they were scattered and hard to find. Support groups existed, but most were focused on emotional support, not practical career guidance. Prosthetic companies sold devices but provided little information about actually using them in real-world work situations. She spent hours clicking through forums, reading stories of amputees struggling to return to their careers. A construction worker who couldn't go back to his physical job. A teacher who felt self-conscious standing in front of her class. A nurse who couldn't stand for 12-hour shifts anymore. And she realized something. There was a gap. A need that wasn't being filled. As a physical therapist, she understood rehabilitation. As an amputee, she understood the lived experience. What if she could combine those two things? What if she could help other amputees navigate what she was going through? The idea was small at first, tentative, but it grew in her mind, taking shape. And for the first time since the accident, Sarah felt something other than anger or grief. She felt possibility. The first step. Sarah spent 2 weeks researching before she told anyone about her idea. She discovered that there were 2 million amputees in the United States, with 185,000 new amputations every year. Most were older adults who'd lost limbs to diabetes or vascular disease. But there was also a significant population of traumatic amputees like her. Accident victims, veterans, people whose lives changed in an instant. And most of them struggled with the same things she did. Not just the physical challenges, but the practical ones. How do you return to work? How do you adapt your job? What are your rights as a disabled employee? How do you navigate insurance, prosthetics, and rehabilitation while trying to maintain a career? The resources that existed were generic, medical, focused on basic mobility. Nothing addressed the real-world challenges of being a working professional with a limb difference. Sarah knew rehabilitation. She knew the body, movement, adaptation. And now she knew what it felt like to be on the other side, to be the patient instead of the therapist. What if she created specialized programs for amputees returning to physically demanding careers? What if she combined her PT expertise with her lived experience to fill this gap? The idea terrified and excited her in equal measure. She called Linda first. "I've been thinking about the practice. I don't think I can come back to regular PT work, not the way I used to. But I have a different idea." She explained her concept: specialized rehabilitation programs for amputees, focused on return-to-work outcomes. Programs tailored to specific careers: healthcare workers, teachers, trades, retail, any job that required being on your feet. Linda was quiet for a moment. "Sarah, that's actually brilliant. But it would require completely restructuring the practice. New equipment, new marketing, different insurance billing." "I know. That's why I think we should start small. 1 or 2 clients. Build the program, test it, see if it works." "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Sarah looked down at her prosthetic leg. "No. But I don't think I'll ever feel ready. I just need to start." Her first client came through a recommendation from Dr. Park. His name was Marcus Williams, a 42-year-old firefighter who'd lost his left leg below the knee in a warehouse fire. He'd been told he could never return to active duty. "I've been a firefighter for 18 years, Marcus said at their first meeting, his voice tight with emotion. "It's not just my job. It's who I am. And they're telling me I'm done. That I should take disability and find a desk job." Sarah understood that feeling completely. "What if I told you there might be another option? It won't be easy. The training will be intense. And I can't guarantee you'll pass the physical fitness test. But I can help you try." Marcus's eyes filled with hope. "When do we start?" They started the next day. Sarah designed a program unlike anything she'd done before. Traditional PT plus functional training specific to firefighting. Climbing stairs in full gear, carrying weight, working in confined spaces, all adapted for a prosthetic user. It was grueling work. Marcus struggled. Sarah struggled. There were days when both of them wanted to quit. But slowly, impossibly, it started working. Marcus got stronger. His balance improved. His confidence grew. And Sarah discovered that helping him gave her something she'd lost: purpose. 3 months later, Marcus passed his department's physical fitness test. He was cleared to return to active duty. When he called to tell Sarah, he was crying. "You gave me my life back," he said. "I don't know how to thank you." "You just did," Sarah said, her own voice thick. "And Marcus, you gave me mine back too." Word spread. Dr. Park referred another client. Then another. A nurse who'd lost her leg to cancer. A construction worker injured in a fall. A teacher who wanted to return to her classroom. Each person came with their own challenges, their own goals, their own fears. And Sarah helped them, one step at a time. drawing on both her professional expertise and her personal experience. 6 months after starting, Sarah had 12 regular clients. She'd converted half of her old practice into a specialized amputee rehab center. She'd invested in specialized equipment, adjustable parallel bars, varied terrain training surfaces, functional task simulators. She was working harder than she'd worked in years, standing for hours, demonstrating movements, physically supporting clients. Her residual limb ached at the end of every day. She'd had to adjust her prosthetic socket twice to accommodate the increased activity. But she felt alive. More alive than she'd felt in months, maybe years. Emily came home for spring break and found her mother in the clinic at 7 p.m., working with a patient. "Mom, you're exhausted. When was the last time you took a day off?" "I'm fine," Sarah said, but she was leaning heavily on a counter, her limp more pronounced than usual. "You're not fine. You're overdoing it. I'm worried about you." Sarah looked at her daughter and saw genuine concern. Not pity, not fear, just love and worry. "You're right," Sarah admitted. "I'm pushing too hard. But this work matters. These people, they've been told their careers are over, that they're done. And I'm showing them that's not true." "I know it matters," Emily said gently. "But you matter too. You can't help anyone if you burn yourself out." Sarah knew Emily was right. She was trying to do too much, prove too much. To herself and maybe to the world. That weekend, Sarah did something she'd been avoiding. She went to an amputee support group. The meeting was held in a church basement. About 20 people in a circle of folding chairs. Young and old, recent amputees, and people who'd been living with limb loss for decades. Some had visible prosthetics. Others used wheelchairs. Sarah almost left 3 times before the meeting started. But she stayed. People shared their stories, their struggles, their victories. A 68-year-old man talked about learning to garden again. A 30-year-old woman described running her first 5K. A veteran spoke about nightmares and therapy and slowly finding peace. When it was Sarah's turn, she hesitated. Then she spoke. "I'm Sarah. I lost my leg 6 months ago in a car accident. I'm a physical therapist, and I've started a program helping other amputees return to work. And I'm struggling. I'm working too much, pushing too hard, trying to prove that I'm still capable, that I'm still me." An older woman across the circle smiled. "Honey, you're trying to run before you can walk. We all do it. We think we have to prove we're not broken. But here's the thing, you're not broken. You're just different. And different is okay." After the meeting, several people came up to Sarah. They thanked her for the work she was doing. They asked for her information. One woman, a 55-year-old accountant, said, "I've been too scared to go back to work. Everyone keeps telling me to retire on disability. But I'm not ready to be done. Can you help me?" Sarah gave her a business card. "Yes, I can help you." Driving home that night, Sarah realized something. She'd spent 6 months trying to prove she was still the same person she'd been before the accident. Still strong, still capable, still independent. But she wasn't the same person. And that was okay. Because this new person, this woman who'd lost so much and was building something from that loss, might actually be stronger. She was becoming someone who understood both sides. The clinical knowledge of rehabilitation and the lived experience of disability. And that combination was powerful. The business grew. Sarah hired an administrative assistant. Then another therapist, a former amputee himself, who understood the work from the inside. She moved to a larger space. She started getting referrals from hospitals, prosthetic clinics, insurance companies. 1 year after the accident, Sarah's specialized amputee rehabilitation center, called Second Step, was serving 40 clients a month and had a waiting list. But more importantly, she was changing lives. Her clients were returning to careers they'd been told were impossible. They were regaining confidence, independence, purpose. just like she had. Building something bigger. 2 years after the accident, Sarah stood in front of a room full of physical therapists at a national conference, about to give a presentation on amputee rehabilitation. Her hands were shaking. She'd spoken at conferences before the accident, but this felt different. More vulnerable. More personal. "My name is Sarah Mitchell," she began, "and 2 years ago, I lost my right leg in a car accident. I was 50 years old, a physical therapist with over 2 decades of experience. And I thought my life was over." She paused, looking out at the audience. Hundreds of faces looking back at her. "I was wrong. My old life was over. But my new life, the one I've built since then, has been more meaningful than anything I could have imagined." She spent the next hour sharing her approach to amputee rehabilitation, the techniques she'd developed, the outcomes she'd achieved. She showed videos of her clients. Marcus back at the fire station, the nurse working 12-hour shifts, the teacher standing in front of her classroom. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Afterwards, dozens of therapists approached her, asking questions, requesting her contact information, wanting to learn her methods. One woman, a PT from Seattle, said, "I have 3 amputee patients right now who've given up on returning to work. This gives me hope that I can actually help them." "You can," Sarah said. "And if you need support, reach out. We're building a network." Because that's what Second Step had become. Not just a clinic, but a growing network of therapists, prosthetists, and amputees helping each other. Sarah had started creating online resources, video tutorials, training programs, support forums. What began as a small local clinic was becoming a national movement. But growth brought new challenges. The larger Second Step became, the more administrative work it required. Sarah found herself spending more time on paperwork, insurance claims, and management than actually working with patients. "I didn't start this to run a corporation," she told Emily one night over dinner. "I started it to help people." "Then hire someone to run the business side," Emily said simply. "You're trying to do everything yourself again." Emily was right. Sarah brought in a business manager, a woman named Jennifer who'd run healthcare startups before. Jennifer took over operations, billing, expansion planning, freeing Sarah to focus on what she did best, helping patients. The business model evolved. Sarah began training other therapists in her methods, creating a certification program for amputee rehabilitation specialists. She developed standardized protocols that could be implemented in clinics across the country. 3 years after the accident, Second Step had expanded to 5 locations across Oregon and Washington. Sarah had trained over 100 therapists in her techniques. The organization was serving 200 amputees a month and had helped over 500 people return to work. Annual revenue exceeded $800,000. But more important than the money was the impact. Every week, Sarah received messages from clients whose lives had changed. A veteran who'd become a police officer. A single mother who'd returned to nursing. A teacher who'd been afraid to stand in front of students and now mentored other amputee educators. But the moment that meant the most came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. A woman walked into the clinic, leaning heavily on crutches, looking exhausted and defeated. She was in her early 50s, recently discharged from the hospital. Her right leg had been amputated below the knee. "Are you Sarah Mitchell?" the woman asked. "I am. My prosthetist told me about you. Said you might be able to help me. I'm a chef. I've worked in restaurants for 30 years. And they're telling me I can't do it anymore. That I need to find a different career." Sarah looked at this woman and saw herself 3 years ago. Angry, scared, grieving the loss of her identity. "What's your name?" "Christina." "Christina, I'm going to tell you the same thing someone told me when I was where you are now. The question isn't whether you can return to your career. It's whether you will. Whether you're willing to do the hard work, push through the pain, learn a completely new way to move. I can help you." But you have to want it. Christina's eyes filled with tears. I want it. I just don't know if I can. 3 years ago, I couldn't walk to my mailbox. Today, I'm standing here, running a business, helping people like you. If I can do it, you can too. Christina became one of Sarah's clients. 6 months later, she was back in a restaurant kitchen, running a prep station. A year later, she'd been promoted to sous chef. You saved my life, Christina told Sarah at a follow-up appointment. No, Sarah said. I just showed you that you could save your own. Looking back now, Sarah thinks about that moment in the hospital when she woke up and discovered her leg was gone. The screaming, the rage, the absolute certainty that her life was over. She thinks about the dark months that followed. The isolation. The anger. The struggle to do basic tasks. The question she'd asked herself over and over. Who am I now? And she realizes that losing her leg didn't end her life. It forced her to build a new one. A better one, in many ways. Before the accident, she'd been a good physical therapist. She'd helped people, made a difference. But she'd also been going through the motions, her career on autopilot, her life comfortable but not particularly meaningful. The accident shattered that comfortable existence. It forced her to confront pain, adapt to limitations, and discover strengths she didn't know she had. It gave her empathy that no textbook could teach. It gave her insight into her patients' experiences that transformed how she practiced therapy. It gave her a mission, to help other amputees reclaim their lives and careers. Today, at 53, Sarah Mitchell runs a thriving organization that's changing how amputee rehabilitation is practiced across the country. She's written protocols that are being adopted by major hospital systems. She's trained hundreds of therapists. She's helped thousands of amputees return to the work they love. But more than any of that, she's learned something profound. Trauma doesn't have to define you. It can transform you. The loss of her leg didn't make her less. It made her different. And that difference became her greatest strength. Last month, Sarah was invited to speak at a rehabilitation conference in Boston. Emily came to watch her mother present to an audience of 500 healthcare professionals. Afterwards, Emily hugged her tight. I'm so proud of you, Mom. Not because you built this business, but because you became yourself again. A new version, but still you. Better than I was before, Sarah said. Stronger. How do you figure that? Because before, I'd never been tested. I'd never had to rebuild from nothing. I'd never had to discover what I was really made of. The accident showed me. I'm made of the same stuff I've been telling my patients they're made of for 25 years. Resilience. If you asked Sarah what she'd tell someone who's just experienced a life-changing trauma, she'd say this. You're going to go through stages. Denial. Anger. Grief. Despair. Let yourself feel all of it. Don't rush the process. But at some point, you'll face a choice. You can let the trauma define you, become bitter and small and stuck. Or you can let it transform you. Use it as fuel. Let it show you strengths you didn't know you had. The path forward won't look like the path you planned. It'll be harder, stranger, more painful than you imagined. But it might also lead somewhere better than you could have dreamed. Sarah lost her leg at 50. She thought it was the end of her story. Instead, it was the beginning of the most important chapter she'd ever write. Today, she helps people walk again. Not just physically, but emotionally and professionally. She shows them that loss doesn't mean the end. It means transformation. And every person who walks through her doors, scared and grieving and certain their life is over, she tells them the same thing. Your old life is gone. But your new life is waiting. And it might be better than you think. You just have to be brave enough to build it. Sarah Mitchell was brave enough. And she built something extraordinary from the wreckage of that terrible day. This is her story of losing everything and discovering what really matters. What will yours be?